The NFL trade deadline is inching closer and closer, and the rumors around Dolphins football will not stop. We got a ton of rumors to talk about when it comes to who the Dolphins may trade away. Coming in from ESPN, I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports, but this is why you subscribe to the channel as well, because ESPN puts a lot of their content behind a paywall. We do not. To watch all of ESPN and read all of ESPN's stuff, it's $120 a year. Dolphins Today, free, $0. So subscribe to the channel for the most up-to-date Dolphins news and rumors. And we're going to take a look at Jaylen Waddle here because, well, they listed Waddle as the number 2 overall trade candidate guy to keep your eye on as we get closer and closer to the November 4th trade deadline. And if we're just going to be honest, I don't love seeing Jaylen Waddle at number 2. And maybe they're just ranking the style of player and the pedigree of the player and not the most likelihood. But anytime you see your 26-year-old wide receiver 1 on a trade candidate list, you're not going to be happy about that. But let's turn it over to Jeremy Fowler to see what he said specifically on a potential trade, saying, similar to Hendrickson, the team does not plan to trade the player, but interest is there. While Miami could be tempted to trade players due to its 1-6 record, Waddle's a building block on offense, and he's due $36.1 million in cash over 25-26. Reasonable high-end receiver these days. Multiple league execs expect the Dolphins' no trade stance to stand, barring a surprise. We actually talked about this from Ian Rappaport earlier this week and how he reported that the Dolphins should and do not expect to trade Jaylen Waddle. And I will ask you, please do not trade Jaylen Waddle. I could not handle the Dolphins dealing him away. It would be very, very disappointing to watch this guy who was drafted inside the top 10, homegrown talent, has been nothing but successful and good to the community and inside the locker room. You just don't trade those guys away. He's one of the more productive wide receivers in the NFL. I think he's a top 15, top 20 guy in the National Football League. I know he just had a quiet game against the Browns this past Sunday, but, it was poor conditions. Tua played the worst game we've ever seen. So I just don't think it's anything you can really take away. But the previous couple of games without Tyreek Hill against the Chargers, Panthers, he played extremely high-level football. So this is a player that you should be building around, not trading away. And I will say this, ESPN gave it a 10% chance of trading Jaylen Waddle. So pretty low. I actually think it should be lower. I think it should be 0%. I don't want to trade him. I don't. I think it would be a bad decision. But ESPN did name the Pittsburgh Steelers and New York Giants as likely trading landing spots if Miami ultimately did deal him away. The Giants have been the team that have generated the most buzz in the social media light and online. So you'd have to imagine if Waddle gets traded, that's the team most likely to pull it off. But I hope he doesn't get traded, and I don't think Miami should do it whatsoever. Pin comment on today's show. Should the Dolphins trade Jaylen Waddle before the deadline? Type Y for yes or type N for no. All right, last part, I'll talk about Waddle here. I get if people do say yes. I do, because this team has not a lot of players on it that should be here, let's say 3-4 years from now. But I don't think Miami should tear it completely down, because when you do go through a rebuild, you need pillars on both sides of the football. Jaylen Waddle, a top 15, top 20 receiver in the game, 26 years old, affordable contract over the next 3 seasons where he's under contract. He is a pillar on offense. He is a player that you build around. And if you end up selecting a quarterback in the top 3 or 5 of the draft this upcoming April, well, it will make that rookie quarterback's life so much easier to have a high-end wide receiver that he can trust on and lean on in game and in practices. It will only help his development. It's also a connection that you can build on with a young QB and a young wide receiver. If you look at this Dolphins roster, there aren't many, but I think there are 5 pillars that you keep and build around. Waddle, Paul, and HM are the no-doubters on offense. Paul looks like a stud left tackle. He is just one of the best pass-blocking offensive linemen in the game. Just needs to improve on that run department, but I believe he will get there. Waddle and Achane are so good at their position. 24 Achane, Waddle 26, both top 5, top 15 at their position. And on defense, I think Robinson and Grant are pillars defensively. You don't have a linebacker pillar. You don't have someone in the secondary. I know Chop has been non-existent this year, but after a good rookie season, you have to imagine with more opportunities, if you trade a Phillips, if you trade a Chubb, he'll start to be more productive. And I know we've talked a lot about how Kenneth Grant has been really bad, but he had his best game of his career this past Sunday against the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Browns don't have that good of an offensive line, but I was pleased with how Grant looked. And I think the film really speaks on maybe improvements coming for the 13th overall pick out of Michigan. I think it's too early to write Grant off. I know it's been really bad, but it hasn't been so bad to where it's not salvageable. It's very different from Jonah Savianaya. When you watch him play, it almost looks like he is donezo and he has no chance to play meaningful and good football in the future. I think Kenneth Grant does. I'm not willing to give up on him just yet. I would consider him still a pillar since he was just a first-round pick, 6 months ago at this point. Let's transition over to a surprising one. Trading for wide receiver Jacobe Meyers. He was 5th on ESPN's list of trade candidates, and the Dolphins were listed actually as a team that would fit and be a landing spot for Jacobe Meyers, which I find very, very interesting. More coming up on that here in a second. But we are sponsored by Mando. It is the fall, crisp air, football, bonfires, but if you're like me, still putting in work, you're going to end up sweating. Don't let body odor sideline you. Mando deodorant plus sweat control is for real working guys. Clinical strength sweat control, one swipe, and you're good to go. It controls both sweat and odor for 72 hours, and after just 12 hours, underarm sweat was reduced by 92%. This stuff works. Mando starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. My personal favorite are the deodorant wipes. Whenever I'm traveling, running errands, going to visit friends, if I need to freshen up to make sure I'm smelling right and I'm not having that nasty body odor, deodorant wipes are there to help me out. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code CHAT. Use code CHAT at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide, plus free shipping, shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness. Jacobe Meyers would be a fascinating addition to this wide receiver room. One of the more underrated and sustainable wide receivers we've had in the NFL over the last 4 seasons. Final year in New England, he was Mac Jones' number 1 target. I mean, he put up 800 yards, 6 touchdowns, and then ultimately New England lets him go, let him walk in free agency. The Raiders signed him to a 3-year, $37 million deal, and he has been phenomenal in Vegas. Consistently, their number 1 target. Even when they add Devontae Adams, like Jacobe Meyers was still a force to be reckoned with, had an 1,000-yard season a year ago, and he's just one of the more underrated guys that no one talks about as a high-end wide receiver in the National Football League. Can he be a legit number 1? No, probably not, but he's a very solid wide receiver too. And ESPN has his percent chances of being dealt before that November 4th trade deadline at 35%, which I would consider pretty high. They had the Steelers, Dolphins, Giants, and Patriots on the list, but I just found it so interesting that the Dolphins were the number 2 team listed on Meyers' potential landing spots. It would make a lot of sense. I actually think he would be a perfect fit on this football team. Like, if you think about a complementary wide receiver to Jaylen Waddle as your wide receiver 1, assuming you keep him, it is someone that can work the slot, work the middle of the field, and be a go-to security blanket possession type wide receiver, because Waddle is more of that big play threat over the middle of the field on posts and verticals and get him on drag routes where he could turn upfield and make things happen. Jacobe Meyers does that at a high level. He's reliable, good hands, and can work over the middle of the field at a good rate. I think he'd be a perfect wide receiver too for Jaylen Waddle and the Miami Dolphins. But with that being said, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for Miami because I mentioned it. He signed a 3-year deal with Vegas in that 2022 offseason, and 2023, 24, this is the last year of his deal. So if you trade for Jacobe Meyers, you're going to have to pay him. And I am open to trading 4 players that are going to be free agents and then extending them rather than waiting till free agency if they are guys that would make sense to build around. I've talked about it with Nic Rohloff in the corner from Seattle, to where it's like, we have no future at the cornerback room. Trade for the 26-year-old corner who has had success in the past on a cheap 5th-round pick potential. Sign him to an extension so you can get him before he hits the open market. Just don't think that makes a lot of sense here for Jacobe Meyers, though, because he's a little bit older, and I don't feel as if that is the right guy to go trade and extend. It would be a player at a bigger position of need, like edge rusher, like corner, and potentially on the offensive line. Segue over from wide receiver talk to edge talk. Jaelan Phillips. He is obviously one of the biggest players in terms of trade rumors around the Dolphins right now. He actually came in at number 8 on ESPN's list. We saw Meyers at 5, Waddle at 2. Jaelan Phillips came in 8 out of the top 25, behind Mark Andrews and Chris Olave, which surprised me a little bit there. Fowler on Jaelan Phillips. As Phillips and teammate Bradley Chubb have circulated in rumors, multiple teams I spoke with believe that Phillips would hold more value than Chubb due to upside. A string of injuries stalled his rising star status, but he's working his way back. Mike McDaniel did say this past week that any Dolphins trade rumors are baseless currently. Now, when you look at their article, they listed 3 teams as landing spots for Jaelan Phillips: the Kansas City Chiefs, San Francisco 49ers, and Detroit Lions. ESPN's chances for him to be traded, though, is actually 30%. And I feel like that is lowballing it. I think the chances of Phillips being traded is basically at 50%. I would put a 50-50 chance Phillips gets traded. And it would be a smart decision for the Dolphins to trade Jaelan Phillips. There's no need to hang on to him. He is not under contract past this season. And assuming you have a new GM, new head coach in 2026, where this is all heading, they were not the regime that drafted Jaelan Phillips. They are not the regime that coached him up, knows his strengths. And if he is going to go out there and command like $15 million per season on the open market in free agency, because he is still 25, 26 years old and a former first-round pick who's had massive success, why should Miami pay that? Because the new regime might not want him in their new scheme, as well as the injury history. So you should move off of him now instead of losing him for nothing in the offseason. But cast your vote. Who is the player on the Dolphins roster that is the most likely to be traded? Get down in the comment section and let me know. I do think it is either Jaelan Phillips and Bradley Chubb. And Fowler mentioned those two have garnered a lot of interest in the trade market right now. I think Phillips, like Fowler said, would earn a better return for Miami. Although Chubb is under contract next year, Phillips is younger. He's been better. He sets the edge better and run. He's been more efficient in rushing the passer as well. Bradley Chubb has the 4 sacks, but Jaelan Phillips has been the better player without a question. And to me, I just wanted to spiel about Jaelan Phillips not being here next season. Bradley Chubb won't be here either. He has a $30.1 million cap hit for 2026. If you trade him now, you'll save $7 million for next season. You will take on a $23 million dead cap, which isn't ideal. You could wait till the offseason and cut him or trade him post-June 1st. If you did that, you would save $20 million in cap space and only take on a $10 million dead cap hit. So you have to make decisions on how you want to move forward with Bradley Chubb. You could save $7 million and trade him now and recoup a 5th, 6th round pick potentially, but have a $23 million dead cap. Or you can wait till the offseason and save $20 million and only have a $10 million dead cap. But with Jaelan Phillips, it's so simple because he's not under contract next year. It doesn't affect your future capital and money. So why not just trade him now and get a 3rd, potentially 4th round pick? That'll do it for this trade rumor video. We'll be back later today with a live show and another video. But make sure you do subscribe because remember, you might not be able to see these trade rumors and articles from ESPN if you don't pay for ESPN Plus. Well, you don't have to pay here. So subscribe, and I'll see you later.